Hi, welcome everyone. We've got 27 people on the call. I think there was 32 people signed up. It was gone up to 28 now. I will just wait for one more minute just to make sure that everyone's able to come in and settle in. But also, I'm conscious that of the time difference, and I don't want to stretch this too far into your evenings. So let's just wait for one more minute. We're at 29 just to make sure everyone's got time to join in, and we'll get started in a second. Right, so welcome everybody. My name is Daniel Ovalle Costal. I'm an architect and also an associate professor here at the Bartlett School of Architecture. I do quite a bit of teaching in different programs in the school, but also run admissions for our department. And we're like a fairly big department. Our student numbers this year is around 1,600 between undergraduate, postgraduate taught, and postgraduate research students studying architecture with us in London. And today is just like a very brief overview of what we do as a department, where we sit within London, within UCL, and what programs of study you can do with us. So in this talk, I will run a little bit through who we are as a department, an overview of our courses, also a little bit about the application process and what the portfolio, the interview, and so on. And we'll leave some time at the end for Q&A. Right, so at the Bartlett, we're an architecture school, and we have a really long tradition of innovation and creativity. We teach and research architecture, and we're part of UCL, which is a research-led university. That means that our teaching methods are always embedded within research. And you will see that as I describe the courses, that the word research and design research come up a lot. A little bit about our history. Architecture has been taught at UCL for the last 180 years, more or less, and we're one of the oldest architecture schools in the UK. And our first architecture professor at UCL goes back over well over 100 years. We're now part of the wider faculty of the built environment, which is one of the largest faculties at UCL, both by number of students, but also by number of departments. Is 4 large departments with undergraduate and postgraduate teaching, plus another 4 departments that focus on postgraduate education as well. And as a faculty, we've been ranked #1 in the world for the 3rd year running for architecture and built environment in the QS university rankings. That's covered over there. And also within the UK, we are #1 for architecture as well for consecutive year in the same ranking. But also, this is fresh off the press. In the last couple of weeks, we were also ranked 1st for architecture in the Guardian University Guide. So, as I said, as a department, as a School of Architecture, we are a community of like almost 700 students from all over the world, and we teach across 2 campuses at UCL, our Bloomsbury campus in central London, where we have a whole building at 22 Gordon Street that location, that address has been the home of the Bartlett for many decades. But also recently, UCL, as a major university in London and in the UK, has expanded into a second campus in the east of London, within the Queen Elizabeth Olympic Park. In there, we have 2 locations, here East and UCL East, and the Bartlett is involved in both of those locations. And as I go through, I'll sort of like mention where the different courses are based, which is really very much related to how those courses are taught. So 22 Gordon Street, as I said, is the sort of like historic home of the Bartlett. This building looks quite new, but actually we've been there for many decades, and the building used to look a lot different. And about 10 years ago, we sort of like stripped it back down and extended it and reclad it into a state-of-the-art building that is mostly actually devoted to studio space for our students to be working there on their projects, and it's sort of like open 7 days a week. You have access to workshops, studio spaces, and more specialist facilities. As I said, here is in the Queen Elizabeth Olympic Park, and this building used to be the press center for the London 2012 Olympics, and it's now a sort of like knowledge industries space. So we've got neighbors there, such as the Victoria and Albert Museum and their brand new storehouse branch. We have 3D printing companies. We've got other universities, and here we have the kind of spaces that allow you to build larger prototypes and installation. And a lot of our prototype-based installation courses are based in that campus. And then more recently, UCL East is a brand new building. It opened only 2 years ago, and that's where some of our more recent courses are based as well. And it's also within the Queen Elizabeth Olympic Park. You've got the Olympic Stadium, literally is our next door neighbor. Right. Something else to cover as well is how you become an architect in the UK. Many of you might be in the way of becoming architects or thinking about becoming architects, and this is a sort of like pathway of how it has worked for a while in the UK. Typically, you would be doing a 3-year undergraduate course. You could then take 1 year out in practice, and then you would come back to university to do a 2-year master's. And then the final step, where you call Part 3, is a part-time sort of like course that you do while in practice. This is about to, or is in the process of changing in the UK, meaning that the requirements for an undergraduate degree are becoming a lot softer. They're still going to be required, but the undergraduate is not going to consider a milestone for qualification. And instead, that academic milestone is all concentrated at postgraduate education. So you can start seeing this landscape of how you become an architect in the UK, as there will be a lot more undergraduate options. And in our own school, we've gone in the last few years from 1 undergraduate course to 4 undergraduate courses to sort of like reflect the fact that landscape is changing to give you guys more options. And then the sort of like main point of qualification would be at postgraduate level. And as I said, recently we've developed alternative routes into architecture. So we've got an MSci course that compresses those 6 to 7 years into 5, and an MEng course that allows you to study architecture and engineering at the same time. And I will cover those in a minute. So as I said, like we've got 4 undergraduate courses at the Bartlett. The first one is the Architecture BSc, which gives you an RIBA Part 1 qualification, and it's a full-time taught program of 3 years. It's one of the longest architecture courses in the UK, and also one of the most prestigious. If you think about this sort of like #1 reputation of the Bartlett, is strongly grounded on how well trodden the path is for this course. And more recently, as I said, we put together the MSci course, which brings Part 1 and Part 2 together into a single course. So this is what sort of like the scheme looks like, rather than the sort of like pattern of 3 years, then 1 year in practice, and then 2 years for a master's. The MSci brings all of that, compresses all of that together into 5 years. And at these accreditation changes coming into the UK, we're aiming to give you a full professional accreditation after the 5 years of the MSci course. And then the other sort of like more innovative course that we have, and which is also and which is based as a newer course in our Eastern campus, is the MEng. The MEng is trying to tap into the need for interdisciplinary professionals within the construction and built environment industry. So what it focuses on is in giving you an undergraduate over 4 years of education, not only a Part 1 qualification in architecture, but also a accreditation in civil engineering and building services engineering. And this is like quite an important course that we teach in conjunction with 2 other departments at UCL. That will be the civil engineering department, part of the engineering faculty, but also the Bartlett School of Energy, Environment and Resources, who bring in the sort of like building services and environmental design part of the course. And again, this course is also sort of like evolving to reflect the changing landscape in architecture accreditation in the UK, and it will be shortly be extended into a 5-year course, which again, after the 4 years, you will get the 2 engineering qualifications as you do nowadays, and then after the 5th year, you will get the full architecture qualification. And then finally, we also have an architectural and interdisciplinary studies course at undergraduate. And this is a course for those who are interested in architecture, but perhaps do not want to practice as architects. And it's in a quite innovative way for not just for the Bartlett, but also for UK undergraduate education. It's set up like as a liberal arts degree. That means that the amount of modules that are compulsory and core to the course is quite small compared to other courses. It's about 40%, and they're about creative practice. So design and creativity and innovation, which is the core values of the Bartlett, are still really embedded in this course. But then the rest of the 60% of your credits you can take from all over UCL, meaning that no graduate of this course has the same profile. Everybody has sort of like the ability to craft their undergraduate journey along their interest and sort of like build a career that is uniquely your own. This is a bit about our entry requirements in terms of A-levels. The engineering and architectural design degree requires 3 A's at A-levels, and all other courses are working against an AAB entry requirements. And then we've also got set out entry requirements for international baccalaureate diploma. And I would advise, if you're curious about entry requirements for any of our courses for international entry, our undergraduate and postgraduate prospectus has that information with a drop-down for every country in the world. And those are able to give you quite all of the nuance that you need to take into account, perhaps if you're studied abroad, if you're coming from a different country, in your case, Taiwan, and so on. Right. Moving on to some of you might be interested in postgraduate education, and we have a quite robust set of masters delving into architecture and what we like to call the expanded field. That is all of the areas of knowledge and practice in which architects can really have a voice, and in which they can really sort of like contribute to different disciplines and professions, but also areas in which other disciplines and professions have something to say about architecture. The first 2 architecture and landscape architecture courses are accredited courses and are part of the journey for a professional qualification. Then we have sort of like more history-orientated courses, a more sort of like theory one, and a more design-based one. We have MArch courses that take more of a computational approach to architecture and to urban design and so on. And I will go into a little bit more detail in a second. And then most of them based in the UCL East campuses. We also have more innovative courses that deal with matters such as performance, situated practice, cinematography, video games, bio-integrated design, and so on. So we'll go quite quickly through these, and then we can move on to the application process and open this session for Q&A. First, I wanted to just stop over a little bit on the architecture, MArch, and our landscape courses. These are our 2 professionally accredited courses, and they're part of the journey into becoming either an architect or a landscape architect in the UK. The MArch, again, is also one of our longest running courses. It has been going on for decades, and it has accumulated a significant amount of RIBA silver medals. These are the sort of like UK-wide highest recognition to the work of architecture students at a postgraduate level. It's a two-year course, and it's split such that the first year is a little bit more focused on professional competency, and you develop a project alongside a design realization report in which you sort of like demonstrate that you are acquiring all of the abilities to practice as an architect in the UK. And then it has a fifth year that is a lot more open-ended, in which you develop an architecture project alongside an 8 to 10,000 word thesis dissertation that incorporates an element of original primary research. And this sort of like only two modules model in your second year is quite unique to the Bartlett, and it's really behind the sort of like intellectual depth of the projects that our master students produce, and that has been recognized international. The other, that should be say landscape architecture, is a suite of two courses. You can do an MLA course in landscape architecture or an MA course. The difference between these two is that the MA is a one-year course and requires you to have an undergraduate degree in landscape architecture. The MLA is a 2-year course, and you can access having done lots of different undergraduate degrees. People join us with degrees in geography, architecture, interior design, product design, and then through 2 years, you develop a set of baseline skills in year 1 about biology, ecology, design, drawing, and so on. And then in year 2, you sort of like hone into those skills into a more master thesis level of work. But both courses lead to a professional qualification for landscape architecture in the UK. Now, our two courses that are more concerning the history of architecture are the Architecture and Historic Urban Environments MA and the Architectural History MA. And they are related but very different in their methodology. They both deal with history, theory, and the historic environments in which we encounter architecture and cities. But the Architectural History MA is a purely humanities degree in which you research and write about cities, about buildings, and the people and societies that build them and inhabit them. And the output, for instance, for this course is very typical to the exhibitions and publications. Whereas in the Architecture and Historic Urban Environments MA, while engaging with all of those topics, the output tends to be more of a design projects, albeit always with an element of discursive practice as well. Then moving on to courses that are based in our East London campus around the Olympic Village, we've got our newest, most recent course that's been set up as the Cinematic and Video Game Architecture MArch. This, even though it's a very new course, it's incredibly popular. We get applicants from all over the world, and this is for those of you who having a design background. You want to develop skills to take them into fields such as movies, video, and video games. And this course has been exhibiting its work as part of the Autumn Show, which is now live on our website. And I would really encourage you to have a look at the video games that some of our students have designed. I was playing with some of them at the physical exhibition at the Bartlett last week, and the work is really truly amazing. Then other courses that have been going on for a little bit longer in our Eastern campus are the Design for Performance and Interaction MArch. This is a 15-month course at the moment, but it's being concentrated into a 12-month course to make it more compatible, for instance, with funding bodies that typically prefer to fund 12-year courses, but also to give you a sort of like more compressed journey through our masters. And this is for all of you who are interested in in space, in the ways it interacts with people, in the ways products, facades, any sort of like built environment elements can become interactive or responsive to movement, people, sound. So it's a really diverse course in terms of its output. Some people develop performances, other people develop robots that respond to interaction. Some people develop video installation. So it really benefits from these from the facilities here is where you can build your installations at one-to-one, like the one you see on the screen. And then another course that is set up with a similar premise, also currently 15 months and reducing to 12, is the Design for Manufacture MARC. Again, this course benefits massively from all of the facilities we have here, and particularly all of the fabrication facilities, including robots like the ones that you see on the screen. But in this case, this course is more engaged with the process of fabrication in itself. And I think this is a course that is really geared towards those of you who are interested in architecture, but in the nitty-gritty of how things are built and to push the boundaries of how buildings and construction elements are built nowadays and really innovate on how they could be built in the future. And finally, as part of this suite of courses based in our East Campus, is the Situated Practice MA. This is also about installations, but it's a lot more focused on what these built environment interventions have to say about landscapes, have to say about spaces in the city and how we interact amongst ourselves in them and with them as individuals. And then finally, I want to take you through this last suite of courses that are more to do with computational tools. These are all taught in our main campus in Bloomsbury, and they deal with architectural design and urban design as a field in which the latest advances in computer modeling, procedural modeling and coding can really help us push the boundaries of what cities or architecture look like. A little bit more, these two courses, by the way, are 12 months as well. And then a little bit more research orientated is our Biointegrated Design MSc or MARC. This is a 2-year master's, and it involves a lot of computation, but specifically it looks at nature as a sort of like inspiration of how we can design using computers, but not only as inspiration, but also as elements from nature that can be embedded into design. So graduates from this course have gone on to design facades that are able to capture energy through embedding algae within construction materials, or they have gone on to design ceramic tiles that provide habitat for mosses, lichen, that support ecosystems and biodiversity. And then the last two courses I'm going to cover are also within this sort of like computational field, but they're a little bit more abstract and sort of like honing into research. They're also 12-month courses. And the first one is the Architectural Computation MSc, which is very, very specific and sort of like delving into how computers can help us imagine geometries that would have been impossible to develop years ago. And then the space syntax course follows a similar premise, but is very much embedded into thinking about architecture and cities and how they're organized as structures, and how computers can really help us understand them better, simulate them, and use these computer models to sort of like test future possibilities for our built environment at an urban scale. So these, in terms of our postgraduate entry requirements, they all ask for a minimum second-class UK degree in the appropriate subject. As I've mentioned, this sort of like can vary slightly from different courses. So for the first courses I talked about, the accredited courses, the degree would have to be on those specific subjects, architecture or landscape, but then the other courses are a little bit more open as to what sort of like undergraduate degrees they would accept for entry. And as I mentioned earlier with the undergraduate admissions, you have depending on where you've done your undergraduate degree, you have a drop down in our prospectus pages telling you what are the specific requirements for your country. But we brought in the ones for Taiwan here, as this may apply to most of you. And then just before we open for Q&A, I just wanted to cover something quite important about applying to the Bartlett, which is we really put a lot of emphasis on your portfolio as the main point of assessment of your application. There's no recipe, neither for undergraduate or postgraduate. There's not really a recipe of what a good portfolio looks like. The Bartlett, as you will have seen by the very wide range of courses that we offer, is an incredibly open environment. There's lots of different sensibilities and lots of different sort of like schools of thoughts that are in constant dialogue in the school. So what we want to really see in the portfolio is actually who are you as a designer and as a thinker. Understand how you think through space, how you think through model making, or how you think through drawing. And really in the portfolio, you would want to be capturing a little bit about you, not just your skills and what you're able to do, but how you're able to use it for things like critical thinking, speculative design, and so on. Following the portfolio, the majority of these courses also include an interview, and this is usually a very informal and relatively short talk between 15 to 20 minutes with two academics that would be involved in the teaching of that course. And what we want to understand from that interview typically is discuss your work a little bit more. We typically in interviews, we've already seen your entire portfolio and we've really liked it, and that's why you're invited to interview. So usually we want to have a chat maybe about one of the projects to understand it in a little bit more depth and in your own words, and then to understand as well what do you want to use the Bartlett for, what are your plans for the future, and how this the course you've applied to at the Bartlett can help you realize them. And then just finally, a very brief note on careers. Our graduates typically benefit from really excellent employment opportunities. In all of these rankings that I've mentioned, one of the distinct the metrics in which we score quite well is on graduate employability. Many of them from our undergraduate courses go on to continue their training to become registered architects, but then you can see from the wide range of postgraduate courses that we offer that our graduates really go into a really wide variety of fields, from policy making at an urban level to filmmaking, video game studios, and all sorts of interdisciplinary professions related to the built environment. And yeah, if you'd like to know a little bit more, you've got the QR codes both for undergraduate and postgraduate students study that take you through the right place within the UCL website. And I'll just leave them on the screen and open it for the Q&A. Right, so I see a question in the chat. How many projects in the portfolio shall we include for undergraduate study and postgraduate study? Great question. We usually don't measure it by number of projects, but rather number of pages. And typically there is a 10-page limit for portfolios for sort of like a parity among candidates. So I would try to show as much, both for undergraduate and postgraduate education, I would try to show as much range as you can. So try to show us lots of different skills. Try to keep it concise to the 10 pages, and then I would read very carefully the sort of like ethos of the program that you're applying to, and particularly for postgraduate education, be sure to tailor the portfolio to the ethos of that program. Any more questions? I believe you can, yes. I believe you can. Sorry, I'll read out the question out loud. If we study undergraduate study in Taiwan, can we apply for postgraduate at your university for RIBA Part 2? I believe so. You are at the current moment, you will probably be asked to have a year professional experience after your undergraduate, but that experience could very well be in Taiwan. And then again, as I was saying earlier, this landscape of how you become an architect in the UK is changing, and the part one qualification undergraduate is going to sort of like not be as important a milestone anymore, and essentially the milestone is moving to part 2, so that will make it even easier. But yes, in our EMARC part 2 program, we have students from all over the world who have studied in their undergraduate in lots of different countries. For undergraduate candidates, can we apply with AP? I'm not sure what AP stands for. Would you mind spelling it for me? In the meantime, Cecilia, while you type that out, I can answer another question. Can you share the kind of architecture work that would be strong enough to get into UCL, both for undergraduate and postgraduate applications? Right. Something that we typically don't do is share portfolios, because as I was saying, through the portfolio, we really want to get to know you and understand how you think. Therefore, we don't want to put successful portfolios out there so that people then go on and match what a successful portfolio have done. I think there's the sort of like misconception that we assess the portfolio to see if you've got enough skills to join the program. That is true, but only to a very limited extent. What we use the portfolio for is, again, more about assessing how you think through things like drawing or model making, rather than the skills in and of themselves. Because we understand that one of the reasons for coming to the Bartlett is for acquiring or developing further those skills. Right. So, okay, I got the question now, Cecilia. So for undergraduate, the requirements all of those requirements will be on the prospectus, and they vary depending on the education system where you have been trained. So we've included in this presentation, we've included the A-level and the international baccalaureate, the IB requirements, which are the main ones that our candidates tend to come through. But for any other qualifications, if you go to the prospectus for the program that you're interested in, you will have a drop down, and there you can see all of the requirements, both for academic ones, but also English level ones such as TOEFL or IELTS. And if you apply to undergraduate via foundation program, must study UCL Foundation. Not necessarily. A lot of our undergraduate applicants have done foundation courses elsewhere. Any other questions? Yes, all our undergraduate courses have interviews, and most of our postgraduate courses have interviews. Those interviews, by the way, are online. And yeah, they last 15 to 20 minutes. And as I said, they're split pretty much 50-50 between a small discussion about the portfolio of work that you've submitted. That's why it's important that the portfolio really is not trying to match something that you think we like, and instead is really showcasing who you are, because a successful interview is one in which we really get to know you through speaking through your work. That's okay, Cecilia. I hope that this answers the question. And Sarah Lynn has dropped a link on guidance for international applicants for UCL. I would say as well that if you go to the prospectus of for any of you, if you go to the prospectus of a program and you go into the drop down and you find Taiwan and you get a sort of like entry requirements, and if that's still not 100% clear, or if your case is slightly different because maybe you've studied part in Taiwan, part elsewhere, or you've done a qualification that is not covered in that in the prospectus, do email the relevant undergraduate or graduate admissions team, because they're able to advise on cases that might be a little bit more complex. Just flagging this, because these sort of like entry requirements are not dealt with at department level. They're sort of like centrally managed through UCL. Are architects in high demand in the UK? That's a very good question. It varies. It depends very much. And this is something that I've seen, and now I'm speaking a little bit more about from my own professional experience in practice. I've seen that change significantly and goes back and forth in waves. What you have in architectural practice here in the UK is that you have a very high quality in the industry. I would say standards are very, very high. But you also have within those very high standards a really wide range of architectural practices. You have places like Foster & Partners that employ thousands of architects globally, and you have practices of 3, 4, 5 employees. And if you look at nominations for instance, the RIBA Sterling Prize, which is the biggest sort of like prize in UK architecture, you will have shortlisted projects that are done by practices of 3 or 5 employees, and by practices that are like thousands of employees. The market, though, moves quite a lot between what kind of practices are doing very well and which ones are not doing so well. And for instance, right through the pandemic, the very big practices were struggling a little bit, but smaller practices were thriving. And then I think we're in a moment where it's a little bit more, more balance. If anything, I would think that at the moment, jobs are probably more available within larger practices. But maybe like 3 years ago, most of my graduates ended up going to much smaller practices because they were the ones that were sort of like having a lot of jobs coming through. I think that being in the UK and specifically being in London really opens you up to a very, very wide range of employment opportunities. So, Wushun, you raise a really important point. Since I don't have an undergraduate degree in architecture, would I need to start from a bachelor's program if I want to become a licensed architect? Or are there alternative pathways such as a graduate entry or postgraduate program? So this is what I mean, pardon me. This is what I mean is about to change. In the UK, we're sort of like moving from a system of 3 steps for architectural qualification. The first one at undergraduate, the second one at master's, and the third one in practice, to a 2-step system in which the first sort of like milestone for licensing happens at master's level, and the second one happens later on in practice. That means that once those changes come into place in 2027, and I'll drop the relevant link from the ARB, our regulatory body, in a minute. That will mean that you don't necessarily need to have an undergraduate degree in architecture, although for most people, an undergraduate degree in architecture will be quite helpful. But it will open master's degrees in architecture to people who have maybe done product design or any other sort of like design fields that are not architecture but are like quite related. Does that answer your question? Just going to find. Right, so again, Victoria, as I said, for the specific requirements for undergraduate entry from Taiwan, you need to look those up in the prospectus in this prospectus page. For every program in the prospectus, we have a section titled Entry Requirements. There is a drop-down menu. You will select Taiwan, and then it will tell you what the entry requirements are for, what you mentioned, general high school in Taiwan. And I'm just dropping here. I'm just giving you all the link, sorry, for the student information page in the ARB. The ARB stands for Architects Registration Board, and they're the body in the UK that regulates how you become an architect, essentially. And they've set up a page for students informing you of all of these changes, so you understand what is changing, which is quite a bit. But actually, in terms of a journey, it's not really that big a change. Most people will still be doing some form of undergraduate education in design, architectural design, or a closely related field, then a master's, which will be your main point of accreditation, and then a further accreditation in practice. And now I'm also just dropping a link to one of our prospectus. That's for the BSc. There's like there's the same page which you can access the QR code for all of our undergraduate programs. And essentially, if you click on that link and scroll down to entry requirements, there is a tab that says other qualifications. And then under international applications, you click on the drop down, you select your country, and in your case, you could tick Taiwan, and then it'll give you the equivalent qualifications for that school system. Any other questions? Yes, well, AI is a really hot topic, and in terms of impact for architects in our course at UCL, first from the UCL perspective, you may or may not know that a lot of the work that a lot of like the baseline research and work that went into creating tools such as ChatGPT and other large language models are actually professors from UCL were heavily involved. So in a way, we're not saying that ChatGPT is a UCL invention. It's far from that. But there's been quite a lot of contribution from our academics to that field. So therefore, that means that is one that we discuss very openly, and there's sort of like two, when it concerns the Bartlett School of Architecture, there's sort of like two main strands. On the one hand, there's lots of colleagues actively doing research on how artificial intelligence can help us design better, help us test our design and learn in more depth. At the same time, there's also like a lot of thinking going on the ethical consequences of using AI, its environmental impact, and so on. So the first thing that I would say is that at UCL, on the topic of AI, you will be joining a very, very rich discussion. In terms of the specifics of AI within your work, there is no outright ban on AI, and we expect that you will use it. Many of you will use it, others will prefer not to. It's entirely up to you. What's important is that for any assessed piece of work, you will be asked to disclose how you've used it, in what capacity, and our academic standards haven't changed. So we still expect all of your work to be original work and to be produced by you. And then if AI has been used in any sort of like capacity for assisting you with that work, you need to explain exactly to what extent, so your work can be marked fairly. On your application portfolios, I would strongly suggest to not use any AI, just because of what I've explained a minute ago. Through the portfolio, we really want to get to know you and how you think, how you're able to think through drawing, through model making, through collage, etc. So in a way, AI doesn't let us see that. Any more questions, guys? Right. So, Xuanyi, if you come from a humanities and literature background, I would say, but have an interest in architecture, I would say that at undergraduate, or sorry, what is it? No, sorry, undergraduate is here. Undergraduate, I would say the Architectural and Interdisciplinary Studies BSc is the kind of course for you. This is set up as a liberal arts course. It does have a creative practice component that is about 40% of your credits, but then the rest of it can be taken from anywhere within UCL. That means that you have access to departments such as anthropology, archaeology, English studies, and whatnot. We're the biggest university in the country, probably one of the ones with the widest diversity of departments within. So there's really nothing that is out of bounds. And if what you're looking for is more like a postgraduate course with a humanities background, I would say the architectural history MA, because this is a course that is very much focused on the study and research of architecture from a historical and theoretical point of view. And your humanities background will fit right in. I think we've got time for a couple more questions, guys. Don't be shy. To be honest, I don't. The breakdown of students by nationality changes every year, and we don't have the figures for this year yet because we've only just done our enrollment. But you will definitely find fellow Taiwanese students at the Bartlett. We probably have time for one more question. I think good question. So if I want to apply for biointegrated design MArch, but I haven't really trained in this field during my regular practice, what kind of content should I present in my portfolio? Listen, so for our post-professional masters, so this is like masters that you do after studying architecture or sometimes other related fields, because specifically BioID will get people with architecture training, but also designers of all sorts, but also biochemical engineers and chemists and biologists apply to this course because of its interdisciplinary nature. So don't think that the portfolio, again, is about showing that you've already done work in the specific field of that program, but rather the portfolio is about showcasing how you're able to think through making, through drawing, through computer modeling, and so on. So don't feel anxious that there isn't anything, let's say, biointegrated within your work so far, because what we want to see is actually that you've got an ability to carry out postgraduate study with us, that you've developed some skills through undergraduate, and that you're ready to take them next level, and that precisely you'll join the course to learn how to do biointegrated design. Does that make sense? Right. Perfect. Listen, folks, I think we need to bring this to a close. It's been really great to have you. And all I want to say is please feel free to email me if you've got any questions about any of these courses. I'm happy to, well, I will answer any questions that I can answer. But if it's quite specific about the program, I'm really happy to link you up with the relevant admissions tutor. Each program has a program director or two program co-directors, but also an admissions tutor that looks after the recruitment for that course. And they know the course very well. They typically are a tutor that also teaches on that course, and they manage the admissions process. And they'll be able to answer questions that might be a little bit too specific for me. But please do feel free to get in touch if after exploring the website you still have questions or you have things that you want to clarify. Okay. Thank you so much, and have a really nice rest of your evening.